Hello, and welcome to Narrations by Sean. Thanks so much for joining me today. Today, we'll cover 2 stories from the Entitled People subreddit. First up, an entitled professor can't handle that her student with narcolepsy falls asleep in class. Grab some popcorn or your favorite drink. Let's go. Posted by Matthew Broken Lamp. Let's start with a little background here. The entitled professor, EP, taught the intro class for my university's creative writing minor, which I intended on getting. It was my second minor, I wouldn't have to take any extra classes to get it, and I was working towards a career in video games, so I figured learning to be a better storyteller would be very useful. Also, I'm narcoleptic. Basically, I'm liable to fall asleep uncontrollably anytime I'm working with less than 11 hours of sleep, and I'm not doing any activity that requires quick movements. I've fallen asleep while hanging out with friends, in the middle of concerts, and even while driving. I can feel it coming, so I pull over and no harm done. I was taking EP's class, and it was pretty clear that she played favorites. Namely, that she would only care about your education if you were majoring in something like creative writing or English. Otherwise, she assumed you were only in the class for some easy elective credit. Since the class was small, she knew exactly who majored in subjects directly related to her class and who didn't. I was a biology major, which I didn't like, long story, and much preferred creative writing classes like EP's over my biology classes. It was pretty clear who her favorites were. Mostly because she would only workshop writing written by her favorite students, even though it's very standard to workshop writing by every student in this department. She also refused to schedule meetings with students who weren't majoring in something similar to creative writing, who were looking for extra help or had questions, claiming that her class probably wasn't a priority for us. These things bothered me, but I knew I'd have other, more helpful creative writing professors later. Naturally, because I'm narcoleptic, sometimes I'd fall asleep for a few minutes during class pretty regularly. Because that happened to me during all my classes, no matter how hard I tried not to, and always felt bad when I inevitably did fall asleep. Normally, my professors were pretty sympathetic, but not EP. One day, she suddenly got very angry with me in the middle of the class. The conversation went something like this. It was years ago, so probably not word for word.
Why can't you ever stay awake in my class?
I'm sorry, but like I've said before, I'm narcoleptic. I fall asleep uncontrollably and can't stop it.
But it happens every day.
I'm really sorry. I try very hard not to, but I can't help it.
Well, it's extremely disruptive.
It's not like I scream when I'm asleep or something.
Get out of my classroom.
It's not personal. I just have a disability.
Get out.
I left the class, completely livid. For reference, I grew up in a low-income city and went to an underfunded public school where 2/3 of the students were on free or reduced lunch. I fought very hard to get into a near Ivy League university. Many people told me not to apply, since there was no way I'd get in, even though I was a straight-A student, and was the only one in my class to do so. So I was not about to let EP get in the way of my education. Also, because of the way my schedule and prerequisites worked out, if I didn't pass EP's class that semester, I'd never be able to get my creative writing minor. I immediately researched the school's policy and confirmed that EP was not allowed to kick me out of class because of a disability. I went straight to my advisor, wonderful woman, and told her everything that happened. She was speechless, saying that she'd never seen anything like this happen, and she wasn't completely sure how to deal with it. She said she'd make some calls to disability services and EP's boss. I got an email from that professor later that day which said the following: OP, it's just not acceptable. You need to get some rest before you return to class. It's insulting, not to say a waste of your time. I replied, I have a sleep disorder. I need 10 to 11 hours of sleep or else I fall asleep uncontrollably. And I simply cannot get 10 to 11 hours of sleep and still keep my 52 credits of work, a high but not abnormal number of credits for someone at my university to take, and go to my 8:30 a.m. class before yours. I'm trying to get treated, but it's a slow process. I'm sorry if it's upsetting you, but I'm not going to sacrifice my performance in other classes to make sure you don't have to watch me struggle. If this is that big of a problem, I will have no choice but to drop your class. She replies, yes, OP, sleeping in class is that big of a deal. Probably best to drop the course. I'm sorry it didn't work out. My advisor came through. I came to class the next day with a letter from Disability Services telling her she had no right to expel me from her class, and she called me incredibly disrespectful for putting up a fight. I stayed in her class, passed it, and got my creative writing minor. The last time I saw EP was at a ceremony where I officially declared my minor in creative writing. She couldn't believe I actually cared about the subject matter all along. Her reaction was priceless. The next story is titled, When My Nasty Coworker Gave My Cell Phone Number to My Mother That I Was Trying to Cut Out of My Life. Posted by My Keys Were Stolen. I spoke before in detail about my mother. Just know she's an extremely awful person I'm glad I have nothing to do with anymore. But this is about Ted, a coworker I used to have when I was in college and working part-time in a warehouse. Unlike me, Ted was a full-time employee, but he didn't like it. We were about the same age though. Ted was a snoop, he loved to gossip, and he loved to look for things. Ted also spent long periods in the bathroom listening to his MP3 just to avoid working. The first time he got written up, it was for bringing spicy material to work and reading it out in the open while on break. He called it BS and said our manager was a prude, but no one else sided with him about it. The second time Ted got written up, it was because he gave my cell phone number to my mother. She called my job pretending to be my girlfriend, and Ted gave her the number without question. How did he get it? All employees had their numbers written down by the manager. Most of the employees were part-timers like me, and the employee turnover rates were high. So the manager had all our numbers written down at the ready to call someone in to take over a shift when needed, which was surprisingly often. I wouldn't call the manager an unpleasant guy, but he kept everyone at arm's length. Anyway, Ted gave my mother my first cell phone number, and she immediately used it to start calling and harassing me. Oh, he got in trouble for it when I complained to the boss. It was in the rules that you're not allowed to give out any personal information of your coworkers. Ted actually blamed the write-up he got for it on me and claimed I should have warned him. I pointed out that if I had a girlfriend, then she'd already have my number. She wouldn't need to ask a stranger for it. Ted gave me attitude and stopped talking with me at all after that. Ted got fired a few months later after being caught snooping in the manager's office again, which he'd been forbidden from entering. He made a big show of yelling, "Screw you, screw this job," when he grabbed his backpack and ran out. I saw him again about a year later in the area working for a landscaping service. I rode by on my bike and slowed down when I saw him working on a lawnmower. He didn't seem to recognize me, but I recognized him. I wanted to start with these two stories for lots of reasons. Near the top of my list is the fact that both the professor and Ted got a plate of karma with comeuppance for dessert. Okay, what is up with that professor? A student falls asleep in class. Is it that serious? And narcolepsy isn't about taking a power nap or sleeping because they're bored. They actually can't help it. Then she has the nerve to kick him out of the class because he advocated for himself. That woman is definitely a legend in her own mind. She's probably the kind of person who loses it the first time she's ever told no for something. Am I the only one that sees the deliciousness in the fact that she got told no in writing and she's a writing professor? I would have loved to see the look on her face when she saw OP at that writing ceremony. She disrespected and discounted a student that had the exact qualities that she had been looking for. And you know, if OP ever turns out to be a published author and she found out about it, she'd be the one in the front row stating how she knew all along how talented he was, and she was so excited that she got to work with him on his journey. I had my own sleeping in class kind of situation, not in quite the same way. The college that I went to has a program that if you're a disabled student and need somebody to help you take notes, the university has funds that will pay your classmate to write your notes for you. When I was a junior, I took a comparative religion class, and when class first started, I was having a heck of a time finding a student to help me out. So I asked the professor if it was possible to maybe photocopy her transparencies while I looked for somebody to be my note taker. She told me no and seemed pretty irritated that I would even ask, but I'm one of those people who don't always notice when someone is upset with me, so I just let it roll. I did find a note taker a short time later, and I aced the first exam. Then the teacher told me the problem she had with me. She thought that I came to her class to sleep, just like the OP's professor did. The difference between me and OP is, once I explained to her that the aisle that I sat in had a desk next to it, someone was sitting in, and I couldn't turn my chair without knocking into them. So I just looked over my shoulder and looked down when my neck got tired. It was like a light bulb went off in her head. And not only did our relationship improve and I aced every exam, she started being harder on me because she realized I was intelligent. And as far as the second story, Ted, oh boy, Ted. Why do people do stuff like this? People are allowed to have boundaries. And nobody has to tell you whether they want to talk to somebody or not. And you know, if OP had done the same thing to Ted, Ted would be all up in his feelings about how someone disrespected him and he has the right to make his own choices. But Ted tells OP that they should have told them that they had a bad relationship with their mom and they don't want to talk. So weird. The guy even got 2 chances to avoid getting fired. They told him to stay out of the office and he goes right back and does it again. And as a cherry on top, he goes into a full Eric Cartman and says, "Screw you guys, I'm going home," as soon as he gets fired. Man, the karmic boomerang is undefeated and it knocks everybody out in the first round. I always wonder who does stuff like this. But thanks to Reddit, we'll always be able to know, find out, learn from it, and have some laughs along the way. Thanks for spending part of your day with me. If you like the stories the way I read them, please like, share, and subscribe. We'll see you next time.